Chelsea. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I'm wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and today I am bringing you a monthly book recs video. This is a Goodreads group started by Leah Cooper, where there is a monthly recommendation prompt. I'll link the info for the group down below if you want to check it out. And the topic for the month of June is resistance reads, inspired by the recent and ongoing wave of Black Lives Matter protests in this country and around the world. Leah suggested in her announcement post that this would be a good time to talk about like nonfiction or poetry if you read those things. I have become a pretty dedicated SFF speculative fiction reader, so I don't have a lot outside that genre to recommend. I do have one major nonfiction recommendation, and then I'm going to give you a quick list of SFF books on this theme. But I did decide that I was specifically going to recommend all books by Black authors for this video, as opposed to taking the idea of resistance more broadly. This is going to be a list of resistance reads that specifically speak to the Black experience. And the one nonfiction recommendation that I do have for you is the March graphic memoir series by John Lewis with Andrew Aydin and Nate Powell. This is a trilogy of 3 graphic novel memoirs chronicling John Lewis's involvement in his youth in the civil rights movement in the United States. If you're unfamiliar with John Lewis, he was a civil rights leader as a young man and went on to become a United States congressman. He still serves in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he is widely considered to be a civil rights hero in this country. These graphic memoirs are very text-heavy. They sometimes feel like a bit of a history lesson, but it's nonfiction. You're probably here a bit for the history lesson. I would recommend this series if you haven't revisited this period of American history since first learning about it in school, or if you're interested in different perspectives on this time period. John Lewis has some interesting sort of personal relationships with some of the other major figures of the civil rights movement, and has some of his own perspective on some of the different points of view within the movement at the time. The one caveat I will give for this whole series is that reading it during the Trump presidency feels very, very bitter, because it's framed around President Obama's inauguration as this big sort of beacon of hope and progress. And that's sort of the present day situation, and then the main story about John Lewis and the civil rights movement is told in flashback. And the message is like, look how far we've come. And we didn't stay that far for very long, did we? So moving on to a very short list of speculative fiction recommendations on the subject of resistance and the Black experience. The number one book that I absolutely have to recommend is one that I recently read, and that is Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. This is a Tor.com novella that talks about all of the things that we are talking about right now in this moment with regards to race in America and police violence and mass incarceration. I'll be wrapping up this book at some later point, but this has both some fantasy and some science fiction dystopia elements to it. It follows a brother and a sister. The sister, Ella, develops some pretty intense supernatural powers early in life. The brother, Kev, is incarcerated as a teenager, and it follows how their two stories connect to each other. And this is a book that really encapsulates a lot of the anger and the fury that I think a lot of people are really dealing with right now. This had been sitting by my bed for months, and I never really knew when I was going to have it in me to pick it up and read it, given that I knew how heavy it was going to be. And then this month happened, and there was a period of time when I felt like I couldn't, responsibly engage in actual escapism in any way. And so I read this instead. And then the two other books I have to recommend are quite popular in SFF circles, so probably don't need my recommendation as much, but I feel like they're sort of necessary to mention to round out this list. The first being the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, of course wildly popular, much acclaimed. The first book is the 5th season. This is a post-apocalyptic epic fantasy series with a mostly black cast of characters that focuses on systemic oppression and how these systems of oppression perpetuate themselves through eras of history. It is big and it is sweeping, but it also focuses a lot on the personal pain of some of its main characters. These are absolutely books that are already in the process of becoming classics, and as such, I think they're going to be hugely influential for the future of the genre. And then last, I want to mention another book that has gotten a lot of praise, at least in some circles, and that is An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. This is science fiction. It's a generation ship story about a society that on this spaceship has come to resemble the antebellum South. And ultimately, the resistance that the main character, Aster, engages in has to do not only with the society on the ship, but with the fundamental mission of the ship itself. Where are they going and why? So that is my very short and pointed list of resistance reads for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you have any resistance reads you would recommend, either in the speculative fiction genre or not. Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.